The British first landed on the modern-day U.S. in 1585, setting up their first colony. In 1664, the Dutch governor of New Amsterdam surrendered the territory to the British. This gave the British control over modern-day New Jersey, Connecticut, parts of Long Island, and New York City. The people living in British colonies enjoyed relative independence from the UK. In 1754, the British and French soldiers in North America got into a war. The British won the war, but were left with substantial debt. The British decided that since they spent the money protecting the colonies, they would tax the colonies to pay for the war. In 1764, the British implemented the Sugar Tax Act on the colonies. Then that was followed by the controversial Stamp Act. This sent the colonists into a frenzy. Outraged by their new taxes and a lack of representation in Parliament, staged boycotts and protests. Parliament repealed the Stamp Act, but then voted to give themselves full control of the colonies. Then the British forced duties on the colonies and basically forced them to only buy goods from the British mainland. Parliament eventually removed all the taxes, except for the one on tea, and then sent 1,000 troops to take control of Boston. On March 5, 1770, a group of protesters grouped around a lone British soldier. Then the group started getting bigger and bigger, and more British soldiers arrived. Objects were thrown at the soldiers, who returned with gunfire, killing 5 protesters. 3 years later, in 1773, a group of patriots disguised as Native Americans boarded a British ship in the Boston harbor and dumped thousands of pounds of tea into the water. This enraged the British, who revoked the Massachusetts Charter and dissolved their General Assembly. 3,000 troops were sent to occupy Massachusetts, which sent the other colonies into a panic, who feared that they would be next. On September 5, 1774, delegates from 12 out of 13 colonies met in Philadelphia, where they would discuss their next move. In attendance were notable American figures like George Washington, John Adams, John Jay, and Samuel Adams. It was agreed that the colonies would boycott British goods, but would still remain loyal to the English crown. They also asked Parliament to remove all their taxes, to which the British said no. So the patriots around the country started arming themselves. Called Minutemen, these militias were ready to strike at a minute's notice. The British didn't like their colonies in open rebellion, so they sent 700 troops from Boston to destroy rebel supplies at Concord. On their way to Concord, they were met with a group of patriots, where the shot heard around the world was then fired. The British met other patriot groups along the way, but they were outnumbered by the British. However, when the British reached Concord, they were the ones outnumbered and were forced to retreat back to Boston. The British troops in Boston were surrounded. Trying to break the siege, the British stormed Bunker Hill. It took them 3 attempts and 1,000 lives to reach the top, but they succeeded. The British were forced to retreat from Boston after waking up one morning to see Patriot artillery surrounding them. On July 2nd, 1776, the Second Continental Congress declared independence from the British. The British sent 25,000 troops to New York, where they were able to push the Patriots back to Brooklyn Heights. And then they stopped, allowing the Patriots to retreat across the river. Fighting continued between Patriot and English soldiers until France got involved in the war. The British surrendered in Yorktown after a joint victory by Patriot and French troops. In the 1783 Treaty of Paris, it was agreed that the British would pull troops out of the US would repay the British back their debt, and Spain got Florida. After that, the US and the British got along really well with no substantial hiccups.